Today on the Business Builders podcast, we're discussing how to go about building the marketing capability of your organization. We discuss methods for driving your marketing capability from both directions, from the top down and the bottom up. It's a jam-packed episode today full of practical advice to get your marketing efforts achieving results. Well, welcome to the Business Builders podcast. We are your hosts. I am Brenton Gowland.
And I'm Ron Tomlian. And Brenton, what's been happening with you lately?
Well, I got some news.
Fantastic. What is it?
I've been working with a client for 18 months now on a rebranding process. And I'm very pleased to say that yesterday we launched a new brand. So it's been a long time coming.
Fantastic. What's the brand?
Well, I've been aching to give them a plug. The brand is called Pegs. So it's Pegs with two Gs. So P-E-G-G-S or pegs.com.au. Now, the brand used to be called Mrs. Pegs, but that was 30 years ago that they came up with the name, and I started working with them 18 months ago, and we started talking about direction. We hummed and hawed about the name a whole lot, but then we decided that Pegs was a much better fit for where we're going in the future. It also, speaking of fit, fits much better into the icon spaces in Instagram and Facebook.
You got to think about those things these days.
Oh, you do. A shorter name oftentimes is a better name. Not always, but in this particular case. But the thing I'm really excited about is, and look, if you're listening, I'm so proud of these guys because they have one of basically the best products I've seen on the market. When I met these guys, I thought, a company that sells portable clotheslines, they want me to work with them. That's exciting. And then I saw the products against the competition, and the Pegs portable clotheslines last forever. They literally, you push them and they move as a unit. You push the competition stuff and it wobbles backwards and forwards. And the interesting thing is they last 20 or 30 or more years. So they had a client that bought one of their products right back in day one, and 20 something years after they bought it, they brought it in and they just refurbed the product, like changed the plastic parts, and they kept using it. They didn't want to buy a new one because they loved this thing so much. Look, you might think that Pegs are sponsoring this. They're not.
I was just going to say, after that preamble, I think they should be sponsoring this episode.
I've been holding this in for such a long time, but when I started working for them, I started to see this pattern. Everyone loved the product. And this particular day I was walking through the city holding these two clotheslines as I walked towards a meeting, and I had people shouting at me in the street going, "It's Mrs. Pegs." And I'm like, what the heck is going on here? And very quickly started to realize that people fell in love with these things. But this was a case of the brand was okay, but it didn't match the quality of these products. But now, finally, the brand reflects who they really are and where they're going. So I'm really excited. And it's a really good case study because obviously we're doing a series on marketing, and we're going to get the owner of this company in the next few weeks to interview them about, like, he had a company of, it was 3 or 4 people. Now they're about 6 or 7. But he's gone on a journey and really prioritized marketing. It'll be really interesting to hear from his point of view how this has all come to pass, how he's built the marketing capability of his company, and what the early results are and what he sees as being the long-term results. And then we can check in 6 months, a year's time, and see how this rebrand has actually affected their bottom line and their sales and their future direction.
That is the best introduction to the conversation that we're going to have that I could have thought of.
Well, timing is everything, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you did. Thank you for that. So today we're going to talk about that whole idea of how do you build marketing capability. Last time, if you remember, what we talked about was the problem with marketing. Then we went on and talked about, well, what is marketing? What's the definition of marketing?
Yes.
The issues associated to problems with where marketing lives in an organization and an understanding of that, and a realization that even if you're not marketing consciously or proactively, you are marketing. It's just that you're not in control of the process.
And I think we struck a chord with what we were talking about last week. And the reason I say that is we've been contacted by a few people, got a big old email from someone who's an avid listener who was like, wow, you've kind of struck the nail on the head because I've got engineers who are my bosses. How do you get them to understand how important marketing really is? And how do you get them to understand that growth needs to be focused on? You can't just go with what you've always known. So I think I think this is striking a chord because it certainly struck a chord for me. And I was listening to another podcast the other day. It was Bill Caskey in the United States, the Advanced Selling Podcast, been listening to for years. And what do you think he should say? They'd interviewed some CMOs and he said, you know what the problem with marketing is? The problem is it speaks a different language to the rest of the company. And I was like, timing is everything. It sounds like other people are feeling the same thing. There's two, people just don't understand it. So long way of saying, I think we're on the right track here.
Yeah, it's interesting because marketers often will complain about that as well, that people speak a different language to them in an organization. And I'm pretty sure that marketers like to think, and they probably do think, our language is the language of the customer. I mean, quite frankly, when I was directly involved in marketing in various organizations, I would call myself the customer advocate because I worked in organizations where the customer was almost derided, let alone neglected. And to build the understanding of marketing, you really needed to get people to understand the customer is the reason this organization exists, like we talked about last time.
And I think that's true, but I don't think it's true of all marketers because some marketers don't understand the customers because they sit behind a desk and it's what they have come to be expected from them.
Oh, yeah.
And that is to punch out ads. Even listening to the Advanced Selling Podcast, a couple of sales guys who were talking about marketing, they come at it from a sales perspective. And so their idea that marketing are those guys who build the capability statements and build the case studies and build the tools for sales to use, that's a very small part of what marketing is, like a very small part of what marketing is about.
Couldn't agree more.
And no disrespect to people who run that podcast, but they come from a sales perspective. That's what they think of marketing though.
Well, look, we talked about it last week. Marketing is rarely in organization. The marketing department is rarely in charge of marketing. They're usually in charge of marketing communications.
So to fix a problem, the first step is to understand the problem, is it not?
Yes. So there's two ways of looking at this.
Yeah.
And I think the first way is if I'm the owner of the business, the CEO of the business, in the executive team of the business, how do I get marketing or how do I build marketing capability within my organization as a leader? And at least at that point, you've got someone who's senior in the organization who is interested in marketing. And that's the top-down approach. So the first thing I would say is if you're in that position, you're a leader in an organization or you own an organization and you want to build marketing capability because you understand marketing is important, is to understand what marketing is all about. Educate yourself.
So what's the second approach?
The second one is from a bottom-up approach. When you're a person in an organization like I was in a very large organization many years ago, and everyone was saying, and I think I told people about this, everyone from the general manager down to the person in the coalface was saying, if it wasn't for the customer, we could do a good job. When you have a realization that you need to bring marketing or build marketing capability within that organization, that's a bottom-up approach. I wasn't quite at the bottom, but pretty damn close to it.
Okay. So what we're talking about today is building the marketing capability within an organization. So there's two approaches you're saying. There's a top-down approach and there's a bottom-up approach. But I would say, and we've talked about this earlier, obviously, the key thing for both of those approaches is exactly the same. The goal, if you want to build marketing capability within an organization, is to make sure that marketing becomes part of the conversation at executive level.
And I think marketing becomes a realization and awareness at all levels. It's talked about at the senior level, but everyone realizes they play a part.
Well, that'll be a natural flow on from the board or the owners taking a real interest in marketing. So if it's part of the key conversation about where this business is going, then that will happen, I would imagine.
Yeah,
it's logically.
It's the old truism. If you're not serving the customer, then you're serving someone who is.
Yep. So what are the things that has to happen for that to be part of the conversation? What does that mean? That means marketing is considered, marketing is relied upon, and that marketing is the key thing, important to the business. Otherwise, it's not going to be part of that conversation.
And there are approaches that have been developed over the years to make sure that people at senior levels, board levels, consider marketing to be important. You know, the whole, I don't know if you know the history of the balanced scorecard approach.
Not entirely. I know a fair bit about the balanced scorecard, but
I mean, it was two guys, one at Harvard, one at, I think, Carnegie Mellon.
That's right. Yeah. It was a Harvard article, wasn't it?
It became a Harvard article.
Yeah.
And then a book,
yes.
a very successful book called The Balanced Scorecard Approach.
Yes.
Where these guys had realized that in MBA programs in the United States, if you were doing an MBA program, you were told repeatedly one thing: get your financials in order, get your financial acumen in order, and you will do well in the business world.
Mm.
And what they noticed is that there were some organizations who were doing very well on a financial literacy level who weren't doing so well in the marketplace, who weren't doing so well as organizations.
Mm.
And there were others who were okay in that area, but they seemed to have skills and a focus on other things as well.
Mm.
So they talked to a whole bunch of organizations, and what they noticed is that the ones that were considered successful, as in sustainable, operating well in the marketplace, financially successful, had people who wanted to stay with them and were capable of competing in a marketplace. They had 4 areas that they needed to focus on. The first was financial.
Yep, makes sense.
You got to have money to be able to survive. The second was, how are we doing in the marketplace? What indicators can we use to indicate our capability and success in the marketplace?
So that's the marketing function?
Absolutely. Marketing, customer, however you want to look at it, customer satisfaction, those sort of indicators.
And the other 2?
The third was business processes. How are we improving our business processes?
Yep.
Because our business processes are what we use to deliver value to the customer. And the fourth was our capability within our organization, the growth perspective of our people.
Yes. So HR.
Well, it's more than HR. It's how are we building capability within this organization to improve the processes, to deliver value to the customer, to get a financial return.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. So 4 areas that those organizations.
So it's almost like those 4 areas need to be part of the board or the exec level discussion. Yes.
That's exactly what Kaplan and Norton talked about.
Mm.
They wrote a book, fabulously successful. And then a company came to them later, Motorola, most people know it.
Yep.
And said, not only are those 4 areas important, but we've aligned our business objectives to those 4 areas. And they wrote a second book, The Balanced Scorecard Strategic Approach.
Yes.
And so it's now regarded as one of the best, if not the best, practice strategic approaches to planning, because it aligns with that one area that is often neglected, business processes. But it certainly has marketing in there up with the best of them.
How many businesses at the exec level or the ownership level have marketing missing from the conversation, I wonder?
That's a good question.
So that's what we're addressing today, okay? So for marketing capability to grow in an organization, it has to be part of the strategy at board level or exec level or ownership level, and it has to be an active part of the conversation. So there's something you talk about often, and that is marketing's too important to be left in the hands of the marketing department.
That's right, Jack Welch.
And tell us about that.
What did he mean by that? I mean, it sounds ridiculous. But the truth of the matter is what he was talking about is that you can't just, because most marketing departments are promotion departments, you can't just say, that's their responsibility, we don't have to worry about that now.
Mm.
At the executive level, as a chief executive, as a board, you have to be intimately concerned with what your organization is doing in marketing. Not just say, I've got that box ticked and, just give me a report every so often. I've covered that one off.
Mm.
Dan Wurtenberg in the United States many years ago talked about the 3 roles of the CEO. Chief Sales Officer, I translate that to Chief Marketing Officer, Chief Strategist, and Chief Team Builder, which was HR. So he recognized, and this was probably 20 years ago, he recognized that the CEO, the chief of the organization, however you want to put it, needs to be intimately involved in the concept of marketing within that organization. Yep. It just can't be left to, this is a function that I've got covered off.
And what we established in the last episode was that marketing speaks a different language to the rest of the company. So it's impossible, if you think about it in those terms, it's impossible for marketing to be part of that exec level conversation if it speaks a different language. That's just, maybe we're taking the metaphor too far, but I don't think we are. Because if you're sitting at the table and no one understands what you're saying, why would they want you to be there?
Mm. And unfortunately, this often happens in organizations I think you see it in a lot of different areas. IT speaks a different language.
True.
Operations speaks a different language. HR speaks a different language. And when you get all of those languages being spoken about, which is the one that wins?
Finance.
Absolutely.
But mind you, operations is more in line with that. Yes, there's issues sometimes, but at the end of the day, if the engine room of the business ain't rocking, the finance department ain't going to be delivering.
Oh, and then you get into the whole.
So it's a natural that's seen as important because one goes not without the other.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
a very clear connection.
Yeah, and I suppose the bottom line here is that marketers will often be evangelical about the need to speak from a perspective.
Are you saying marketers are colourful?
Let's not get into that one right now. Marketers are often passionate about speaking from the perspective of being a customer advocate.
Yes.
And speaking about the big wide world around, and neglecting the fact that when they're speaking about that inside the organization, they are speaking to other people. They will talk about, and quite rightly, talk about understanding your target audience and then completely neglect who they're talking to inside the organization. And look, I'm all for marketers being passionate about their customer, but they have to translate that, I think, into the speak of the organization. At the executive level, that speak is typically financial.
Numbers. There's one other thing that marketers do that turn people off, and that is they speak about technology and tactics and the latest and greatest thing to use or be involved with, right? So, and people glaze over because they miss the strategy part, which I think we're going to talk about in the next episode.
Absolutely.
We'll get to that later. But so as you rightly said, the onus is on the marketer in this particular sense to learn the language of the rest of the business in order for them to understand it.
Yep.
But to build capability of the marketing function within your business, marketing needs to be part of the conversation. And we said earlier, there's two ways to approach developing this capability. So let's start with the top-down approach. So if we're going to, and the top-down approach is basically buying into what you said earlier, marketing is too important to be left in the hands of the marketers. So we are talking to business builders here. That is company owners, people who are influencing in the business, management level, exec level, and people who want to develop themselves, young guns, anyone who wants to learn about how to make their business work the best. We're talking to you. So if your top-down approach is to lead the marketing, how do we go about that?
You have influence already, and you come from a position of awareness and realize that I need to build that awareness in others at the executive level and then down through the organization. So drive it, set the agenda, put it on a discussion that happens at every strategic meeting.
And this is really the ideal approach, because if the exec or the owner or the managing director drives marketing, it's got a way better chance of actually becoming critical to the business and being a big influencer in the way the business actually grows.
To my way of thinking, you become, as that CEO, you become the champion of marketing. Okay. Even if other people fulfill the functions and do the stuff associated with marketing, it should be something that you're continually focused on and talking about.
So scenario, that's all well and good to say that, but let's practically look at it. Let's say you are the director, you're the manager, you're part of the exec in an organization, and you just have this feeling, you know that marketing needs to be a key driver in your business. You've looked at Apple, you've seen that Steve Jobs spent a third of his time in the marketing department, all of that kind of stuff, and you know that it's lacking in your business. How do you go out and develop that capability in a way that's going to get results? So the top-down approach, the leaders leading the marketing of the business. How do we go about it, Ron?
Well, educate yourself. Listen to podcasts, read books, look at organizations that have successfully competed in a marketplace. And I would argue that's every organization competes in some marketplace, even if it's only for people's headspace.
Yep.
Don't leave the marketing to a marketing function, or, if you use an outsourced marketing department, don't leave them hanging in the wind. Be their champions within the organization.
So even if you have marketing people, they're going to try and write strategies and so forth. You're saying lead it, even if you've got marketing people.
Listen to them. Don't necessarily tell them that you know more than they do, but be interested in their perspective. Be interested in the things that they're doing, in what they observe, the insights they have, but make sure that it's a priority for you and other people in the organization understand that it's a priority for you, because it is the basis of any organization.
Well, you can do all sorts of things in that regard. Obviously, you can set the agenda about what the marketing department should be doing. You can also set the strategy. It doesn't mean you need to go down and do the marketing strategy, but this is what the marketing department has to deliver. Show me how that's going to happen.
Not only expect it, demand it.
Demand it. I like that.
Ask questions. I find the most effective way to influence people is not to tell them what to do, is to ask questions about what you're thinking about.
In a sense, then you are actually empowering the marketing department. So if I was in a business as a marketer and my board or my exec was really trying to drive our performance, I'd see that as a real enabler.
Absolutely. But also look for the results that they're getting. Don't accept that, give me more money and I'll do more stuff. Marketers, when they get lazy, that's what they do.
Well, that leads us on to the next thing. If you want to drive the marketing from exec business ownership level, you got to find the best people you can to do the job that you can afford. So obviously, if you're in a smaller business turning over a couple of $1 million, you're not going to put someone on who's 220, 250 grand a year, whatever the price of a CMO or whatever it is. But what's the best you can afford at that particular point? Who can you get in there that knows their stuff?
And it might be early on, it's not a person, it's a capability outside the organization, like I was talking about.
Yeah.
But get the right people to do 100%. The work.
100%.
Yeah.
So driving it from the top down, you find the best people you can to actually get it rolling. And I think you were talking about emphasizing the importance of it. That means also setting KPIs. So even if you are using...
Let's not use jargon, key performance indicators. In other words, what am I looking for? And let's measure it. Measurement is incredibly important. And people say, well, you can't measure everything. Yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. You can put subjective measures against things, and it still gives you an indication of performance. So, customer satisfaction. How do you measure customer satisfaction? You get people to subjectively rate the organization. There's nothing scientific about that. It is an indication of their perceptions.
Well, you can almost put numbers on anything. Absolutely anything, as long as you systematize it.
Yeah.
Which means a bit of work from the marketing department.
Yeah. Or, get help from the engineering department to set it up.
That really is that translation. Okay, we're speaking a different language. That is the translation matrix, right?
Yeah.
If you want to translate marketing speak into business speak,
put numbers
measure
on
it.
Yeah.
So that you can actually say, we've moved from this place to that place. Here's a number. We've moved from a 1 to a 2. We've moved from a gold rating to a platinum rating, whatever system you use. But that then speaks to one of the most important things about ensuring that the marketing capability in an organization grows and is invested in is you get results. Because that whole measurement system that you put in place leads to going, well, this is going to make a result. This is not going to make a result. So, but we can see by the measurements what's working and what's not.
And this gets into the difference between objectives and strategy. Objectives about what do I want to achieve?
Yep.
The numbers.
Yep.
For a particular KPI.
Yes.
Versus how am I going to do that? Which is the strategy. So emphasize what you want to achieve first and then figure out how you're going to get it, rather than, we're going to do this and let's see what the numbers tell us. So be clear about what you're trying to achieve.
100%.
Because it will often dictate what strategies are viable and what aren't.
Okay.
Here's one that I often find, especially as organizations grow. We're talking about a top-down approach. Make sure that at the top level of the organization, you are still spending time talking directly to customers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because what I find in the organizations that I work with is that as you grow, talking to customers can sometimes be a little bit yucky. They can complain and, hence if it wasn't for the customer, we could do a good job because they always complain about stuff. And make sure you're talking to the customers to get an insight. To my way of thinking, great organizations force the executive level to spend some time talking directly to customers.
Yeah, that's
because
good.
You get insights that you can never get through reports.
Well, remember we're talking about building the capability of marketing within an organization. So that's making sure that marketing is part of the conversation. You'll never be able to do that if you're not talking to customers, because back to what you said earlier, marketing is almost like that translator for customer, I'm going to say the word sentiment, which means what the customer's thinking and feeling about your brand. It's a translation of that into the board language so that we can understand what's going on with our customers. So you must be out there talking to clients. And I think having the leaders of an organization talking to customers is just vital.
The number of times I've spoken to people who have started to do this after many years of distancing themselves from the customer because it's easier. They get insights that, suddenly I understand what my people have been telling me all this time. Don't get into a situation where they are the revelations. Maintain, when you start businesses, you are often talking to the customers because you're the only one there or you're one of the service deliverers. As you grow an organization, don't ever lose that connection to the people that you are serving.
Yeah, agreed. So look, we've just talked about the top-down approach to building marketing capability with an organization, and there will be lots of things that we've missed. So we've just skimmed over the surface, but what we want to give you an idea of that is the ultimate approach to building marketing within a company, that it's unimpinged, that the leaders see the importance of it. If you're a leader, go and study marketing. I don't mean at university. I mean, find some mentors, find some people who know what they're doing. As Ron said, listen to podcasts. There's lots of great podcasts around, and read books. Educate yourself as much as you can. If you read a few marketing books, really good ones, and we'll get you some suggestions before the end of this series about things you can read, people you can go listen to, etc. We'll give you some resources, but go and educate yourself. So that is the best approach. But there's another approach. And look, most cases we're talking to a marketer here or a business builder, someone in a company who wants to see the company do well. But often it's going to be the marketing department or the marketing person. How do you drive the importance or build the capability of the marketing department in an organization from the bottom up, which means we have to find a way to make marketing really important to the exec, to the board, to the owner.
And it's the same goal as the top-down approach. You want those conversations to be happening at the decision-making levels of the organization. It has to be on the agenda of the board, the executive, and so on.
So in other words, we got to make the marketing function of the business become noticed.
Absolutely. And
noticed for the right reasons, not the wrong reasons, yeah?
Yeah. So really we're talking about the marketing capability concept.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So the
client becomes the exec.
Yeah. So in this particular case, again, as I was saying before, think about who your target audience is.
Yeah.
What are they looking for? What are the problems they have?
Yes.
And how can marketing help solve those problems?
Now, we got some suggestions on this, but I'm going to start by saying, marketing people, this is the thing that's going to take your career to the next level, and it's going to be risky and it's going to be scary. But if you want marketing to be taken seriously, you need to step outside your comfort zone. And what we're about to talk about is if you want to really help a business, there's a few things you need to do. And as Ron was saying, the marketing functions clients are the exec, are the leaders of the business. So the first thing you got to do, like Ron was talking about earlier, is you got to talk to them.
Yeah. And if you talk to them, speak their language.
I would say it's finding out from that exec level, what keeps you guys up at night?
Yeah.
Ask them out for a coffee.
Yeah.
Ask them, say, look, I really want to learn about the company and what's going on. Have you got time for a coffee later today? Have you got time to have one lunch in the next month? And ask them, find out what's keeping them up at night. That's the old saying. Find out what the key things in the business are that they're really concerned about. Because those concerns, if you can get marketing to help fix those concerns, guess what they're going to notice?
They're going to notice marketing.
Yeah, 100%.
So speak to them in their language, which is the problems they have.
Yep.
Look at it from the point of view of an investor and make sure that what you're suggesting has a return on investment using, again, their language, so that if I'm going to spend X number of dollars, there's a return to the organization. Now, the easiest way to do it is to talk about sales, that type of thing, if sales is a problem for the organization. But think more broadly in terms of what is going to, even in the long run, what is going to give us the greatest return for our activity.
Yep.
And make sure that whatever your project you're putting forward, and focus, only talk about 2 or 3 things in solving problems. Make sure that there is the return on investment. Does it solve the problem? Does it give us a positive ROI?
So if you're talking about being an investor, then that's really good, because that means you're seeing the marketing department as being given a pool of money. So how do you invest that pool of money? Well, we have to understand what's driving the thinking of the leaders, as we were talking about. And as you said, we need to pick 1, maybe 2, or at most 3 things to focus on. And they need to be big things, not the small things, because if you come to the exec and talk about how many likes you got on Instagram or Facebook or in LinkedIn or whatever social platform, their eyes will glaze over. But if you find out what their challenges are or what's dominating their thinking, then you come back and present how marketing will solve those things, they're going to pay attention. So for example, one of the companies I'm working with are doing pretty well. There's lots of work, but they've got a new GM. And what that GM's discovered is that there's some problems with the account management. Now, they're great at taking orders, but there are questions about their experience in building relationships. So the GM's worrying, what's going to happen if there's problems with those clients or they face pressure? Are the relationships with those clients strong enough for them to stay on as clients if they face issues? So what can marketing do to help? Well, we're developing a scoring system to measure client health. It's a score that scales from 0 to 5, where 0 represents that we're just a supplier to them. And at the other end of the scale, 5 represents that they see us as a partner business. So what we're going to do is each week in the sales meeting, we're going to get the account manager who manages those clients to give them a rating on that scale and then report on what has to be done to improve the score. But by including this rating in their CRM and then reporting on the client health each week in the sales meeting, we'll be able to help the account managers build awareness and develop tactics to improve these critical client relationships. And in doing this, we're going to develop a language about client health that we can report up to the board in a language that they can understand. So we're effectively translating our activities into something we can measure, and that's helping us at this point address the problem of the moment. And by doing that, we're helping the new GM and the higher ups to see the value of marketing in the business, because we'll align our activities with delivering a higher supplier partner score.
And at the board level, what board are worried about is risk management. If you are lessening the risk of customers leaving the organization, you are speaking the language of the board, because I'm mitigating the risk associated with it. So
if you, now here's another thing about doing the bottom-up approach. We talked about the management walking the floors and going out and talking to customers. Well, Ron, you were saying that if you want to do the top-down approach, you got to market the marketing capability to the rest of the organization. You got to get out from behind your computer. I know sometimes that might be hard if you're one of these marketing people who has to punch out a lot of work via computer platforms and so forth. But there's always a way to find time to talk to people at the water cooler, at the end of the day, for lunch, whatever. Go sit in the lunchroom. If you've got a factory, go sit with the workers.
Go sit with the people who are interfacing with the customers.
Yes.
That could be the salespeople. That could be the service delivery people. That could also be your suppliers.
Yes.
There's no reason why you can't use information from suppliers as a mechanism for finding, as an example, what competitors are doing.
In the case I was talking about with this particular company, that's about getting involved with the salespeople and the GM and understanding what's important to them. It's making sure that you can find a way, or trying to find a way, to be in those meetings, to actually hear what people are saying, even if you can't do it every day, once a month, or get a report. But the marketing people look for insights. So you need to find, if you want to drive the capability of marketing within an organization and you want to get it noticed, find the most important things, go find information about it within your own 4 walls, find a way to contribute to solving those key problems. Don't come to people with tactics about lots of little things. Find 1, 2, or 3 if you want to move this along quickly and get results.
And you've got to tell people not only that you're going to do it, that you did it, and what the results were.
Because to be noticed, you've got to become relevant.
And as I say, don't underestimate the importance of being able to sell, and I'll use that word advisedly, sell the achievements that you've made, because you are trying to convince people of the worth, the value of this activity.
Yep. Now, in having said all this, our advice to leaders of the business was to go out and learn, to listen to podcasts, to get mentors, to get the best people. So, Ron, what's our advice to marketers or people within the company who see the value of marketing, who are not at that board level or exec level? What do they need to do to upskill to do this? So we've talked about things they can do, solve big problems, but you might not know how. You might go, I found the problem. How on God's earth do I fix it?
Well, same thing. Go out and find, talk to mentors, talk to people outside the organization, talk to people inside the organization. How do I influence? Within large organizations, there's a whole nother strata of achievement. And that's about how do I influence within this organization?
Yes.
So talk to people inside who are interested in what you're doing and how best to make that noticeable and make yourself relevant.
You know what? It would be really good to find somebody that we could interview that's done something like this. I don't know how we'll find them. We'll find a way.
We'll find them.
I'd like to talk to both. So as I said, Pegs, the brand that we've just launched, it'll be great talking to the person who's running that, and we'll introduce him in a couple of weeks. I won't give it away. You can do the research. Just go look at pegs.com.au. That's Pegs with 2 Gs, PEGGS.com.au. But that person started life as an engineer, became passionate about this particular brand, purchased it 4 years ago, sat on it for a couple of years, developed a strategy, and then we put it all together. So that person's learnt an incredible amount. But what being really impressed with him is that he's gone out and learnt himself. He's gone out and attended. He went to Queensland about a year ago, I think, and attended a conference to learn about how to develop a business strategy and all those things. So he was constantly working on himself. And that's massively important.
That makes him a business builder.
It does. And so I'm looking forward to interviewing him and a few other people. We'll do that in a few weeks. I hope. So just in summary, do you want to give us a sum up, or do you want me to do that?
No, you can do it.
Okay. So the summary was, if you're wanting to build the capability or the marketing capability of your business, the key thing you want to do is make marketing part of the conversation at executive level, which means it's important to the organization. It's a consideration, and you want to develop strategies and approaches that you can pass down through the organization to be implemented by the marketing department and others. So it's got to become part of the conversation. We've got a top-down approach, and the top-down approach really was for the leaders of a business to go out and educate themselves and learn about marketing, not to leave marketing in the hands of the marketing people, as you said, to drive and set the agenda, to emphasize the importance of marketing by setting key performance indicators, by finding the absolute best people that they can afford to be able to implement the marketing strategies and drive the marketing capability of the business. And really importantly, to make sure that marketing gets results. And part of that means going out and talking to customers yourself, understanding them.
The bottom-up approach is making marketing become noticed. It's all about getting the executive level to be talking about marketing. So marketing, the marketing capability, in this case, the leaders of the business are your customers. Find out what they really want. What are their challenges, and how marketing, and figure out how marketing can help solve at least some of those challenges. Focus and look at it as from the perspective of getting a return on investment for the marketing that you are intending to do. Take some risks, get out from behind your desk, talk to customers, talk to suppliers, talk to other people in the organization, and see how you can influence. And that might mean getting some mentors to do that.
Yeah. So you're basically becoming an entrepreneur within your own business.
Absolutely.
Is that called an intrapreneur?
Oh, yes. That's the term that's been coined, and I think it's a wonderful one.
Yeah. So we really hope you've got something out of this episode, because we're trying to make it really clear. We've got a fair bit of experience, but we're not necessarily the experts. That's why we're going to interview a bunch of people. And
if you've got experiences in, as you said before, we don't have all the answers.
No.
And we certainly haven't got all the experience. If you've had experience in how you've done it within an organization, either top down or bottom up, we'd love to hear from you.
I'd love to hear from those kind of people, because this whole marketing thing, I think it really is a time for marketing to rise up. And, in a couple of episodes' time, we'll talk about how marketing is going to change later this year with digital space, but we won't go there right now. But it's just so important. And I think marketing needs to become a really big part of the conversation of our businesses this year, even if it hasn't been before. So that's all for now, but let's just talk quickly about the next episode, because I think it's worth giving people a preview. What's the next episode going to be about, Ron?
Well, one of the things that I often see is that people focus a lot on the tactics associated with marketing. Do I use a brochure? Do I use a podcast? Do I use a social media platform and so on?
What works, yeah.
Yeah. Without thinking beforehand from a strategic perspective, what is the landscape I'm operating in? What am I trying to achieve? And what's the overall strategy for trying to achieve that? What do my customers want? All this, the sort of strategic stuff that sits above what tactics I'm going to use. And though in that area is, I think, quite badly handled by most organizations.
Agreed. So next episode is going to be strategy versus tactical marketing?
Yeah, strategic versus tactical marketing. What's the difference between the two and how they interplay between each other?
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to that. And for those of you listening, it's goodbye from Ron.
And goodbye from Brenton.
Thank you. See you in a couple of weeks, everybody.